Episode 7 of the Soxcast. We're filming live once again from Blue Sox Academy. And this is a great episode. We've highlighted a lot of our great former players, a bunch of Hall of Famers, and even the guys who have not been in the Hall of Fame just yet. We have a lot of guys who have come through and been icons, fan favorites. And this guy definitely epitomized it. He played for the last iteration of the Utica Brewers back in 2015 and the inaugural Utica Blue Sox in 2016, where he was part of that West Division championship squad. And something worth noting, he is the all-time walks leader in the history of the Blue Sox and is in the top 5 in games played. And also one of few Blue Sox players to have played multiple seasons and finished with a career average over 300. And that is joining us all the way from our neighbors to the north, Jared Baldinelli. Baldy, it's about time we got you on here. Thanks for taking the time.
For sure, man. How's it going?
We can't complain here. Obviously it's a little bit cold. I can't even imagine how cold it is, and I don't even know if y'all are getting the snow. I know we've been, but obviously you obviously have your ties. I can't even imagine like how much it sucks. Having to be stuck in Canada since the pandemic, and of course, obviously, you've had the inkling to obviously come back here to catch a Sox game ever since you hung up the cleats.
Yeah, no, I know we talked about it a little bit too, and the last couple of years, I guess, haven't been in our favor, but I think it's all starting to kind of come around now. I think we're allowed to come into the U.S. for short trips now, so I think like 48 hours or 72 hours, something like that. So starting to open up a little bit, but hopefully by the summer we can get down there.
A lot of time to figure that out. So let's talk about how you got here, into the United States. So obviously, as I mentioned, first of all, you're from Canada, specifically Niagara Falls. And obviously, the number one sport in Canada is hockey. And although baseball has grown exponentially in Canada, obviously 2 professional teams in the past, unfortunately down to 1 now with the Blue Jays. But why baseball for you?
Yeah, I played both growing up. Like I did hockey and baseball. I think up until like sophomore year of high school was probably when I stopped hockey. Honestly, it was an easy decision. It's just one of those things where you're playing both, and if you want to be better at one, you kind of got to drop one and focus on the one that you want. And I always loved baseball, and to be honest, I was always better at baseball, so that was kind of the route that I took. But I also went to high school in Buffalo, New York, so I was over there a lot, and they took baseball a lot more seriously too than they would at high schools in Canada. So it was an easier decision, strictly based on skill level 1. But yeah, I think the environment probably helped a little bit, and I always loved the game.
So you end up at very close by St. Bonaventure. Did you have any experience in summer baseball before arriving in Utica?
I did. I don't think in leagues like as good as the Perfect Game League. I mean, I played in a few local ones around Buffalo. I did the Legion Ball stuff as well. Same thing around the Buffalo area. But yeah, it was nothing as serious as the Perfect Game League.
So tell me about, when you first got here in 2015 and, what you learned about the organization upon arriving there, and, what you remember from meeting everyone within the organization and, some guys that, you call teammates for, more than just that one summer.
Yeah, I was a little nervous, honestly, getting down because I had never been away to play before. So at that time, I had a teammate from Bonaventure, 2 teammates actually joining me. So I had Ryan Cox was coming from Bonaventure and Jack McClure. They both actually, I think, transferred out that year, but they still came down for the summer to play. So that was kind of nice. And I mean, we were one of the only teams I've heard of really that had their players kind of up in a hotel. So first day, I remember my parents dropped me off, checking into a hotel and finding out who my roommate was. And I think it was Coxie at that time. So, and then, yeah, just meeting the guys. I think we met the first time really in the lobby of the hotel, and we all kind of got together, went over some ground rules, whatnot. And then a couple of days later, we met at that restaurant. What's it called, Tim?
Swifties?
I think it's yes. Yeah. We met there for the first time, I think, as a big group. We all had dinner, and And then, it was over to the field, and I mean, we were right into practice and whatnot. So it was a pretty smooth and easy transition. I mean, as soon as you get guys out there playing too, it makes it a lot easier, right? There's no better icebreaker, I don't think, than getting out there and throwing the ball around. So once we did that, it was all good.
So, so before the season started, one of my jobs, I was still doing the broadcasting at the time, but knowing my other capabilities, I was tasked with, going around and relaying, the walk-up music to the then PA guy at the time, Scott Schuster. And, honestly, I was pretty underwhelmed by everyone's selections for the most part, except for maybe a handful. But I got to you and I kind of seemed disinterested. And I walked up to you, I was bored. I'm like, all right, name. And you told me Baldinelli. And I'm like, all right, what do you want? And then you said those two words. And I just had to get my head up and just I had to stop, give you a little fist. I'm like, all right, that's what we're talking about. So those two words are Careless Whisper. Why that?
So I came off a year actually at school. It was just after I think my sophomore season and at St. Bonaventure. And I had a pretty good freshman year. I had an okay sophomore year, and I was starting to see a little bit less of the field. And I kind of went in kind of the end of the year interviews and closing off with your coach before the summer. And it was more of a difficult conversation, kind of one of those, like, you're not in high school anymore. It's Division I. There's scouting reports, there's whatever. And I think some teams have really figured out, kind of your game and your style of play. So, you got to do something if you want to see yourself in the lineup again, or, there's plenty of other guys out there. So to me, it was one of those things where it was almost, I kind of closed out the year too on a bad note. I wasn't hitting well. And I remember Reddick, when he was playing, I think with the A's, he used that song and he was on like a 20 some odd game slump. And he changed his walk up to that. And I think his first at bat, he was like 2 pitches in, he lined that single up the middle. So I figured it's summer ball too. We're here to have fun. It seemed like it worked for him coming off a slump. And yeah, that was kind of the reason for picking it. And I mean, it worked for me. I think I had my best year that year actually in Utica. So it was all good from there.
Yeah, I mean, you hit 347, and in limited time. I mean, you walked 24 times in 25 games, and funny thing is, in the infield, your position happened to be the most competitive. You had to compete with 2 different second basemen, one being Vinny Capone, the other being Adam Texton. Talk about the kind of competition that you had, and ultimately getting that starting spot and setting the tone at the top of that pretty loaded lineup with, Coxie and Taylor Olmstead and Kyle Shade, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it was, it's always one of those things. I mean, even at school and then summer ball and whatnot too, it's a friendly competition. Like, you guys end up ultimately spending a lot of time together, even especially when you're in the same position. So you always want the best for the guy beside you, but you want to be the one that's playing. And, I mean, we had a blast that summer, and we were competing, and it just pushes you that much harder when you got guys that are better and performing well and whatever. Like, you want to be the guy, and everybody wants to be that guy. So, I mean, for me, it was really, I think, the start of the year, I started off kind of slow again, getting in from school ball. And then it was one of those things, like, once I started seeing the ball better. You get used to the fields you're playing at, and you just kind of keep it rolling from there.
So that leads into, your signature performance. You guys have a chance to clinch a playoff spot, which this team had never done in the PGCBL in its first 2 years. And you go up to Boonville, a place where, and again, it's not a knock on you, anyone can go deep there. But, in particular, you against Adirondack, I mean, you own them, really. And that second to last game of the season with that playoff clinching potential, you shine. You hit a 2-run bomb. You drove in 4 runs on the night. What was working that night, and how great was it, with you at the plate, also, being able in the field to watch Ryan Simpler throw an absolute gem.
Yeah. I still remember he pitched a great game, shutout, I think, right? And
yeah, he took a no into the 7th, and I think it's a 2-hitter.
Yeah, it was. I mean, honestly, that for some reason that night, you just have those nights, right, where you see the ball really well, and we needed to get in, and there were a lot of guys on that team that really wanted to win. And I think, I mean, you go up and down that lineup too. I mean, compared to some of the other teams in the league that year, we didn't really have a lot of D1 talent, a lot of the top schools and stuff like that. I mean, we had a few guys, but not many. And which really goes to show you, I think, how far we went, how good of a team we were and how competitive we were, how deep we were on the bench. And you know what, it was one of those nights, and I played against Chris Quitzer, who was the third baseman there. And I played against him because he went to UB. So during school, and I remember rounding the bases, and he kind of just smirked and smiled at me and said, just nodded his head. And I kind of did the same around the bases. And because it's not something that you'd expect, but you see a pitch. I think I remember that one still was like up and in, and I usually don't swing at those. I mean, you can see right how many walks I have. That's something I would have probably ducked, and seeing the ball well that night. So I decided to let it rip, and that was it.
So, I mean, speaking of getting swings in, I got to ask, because, Taylor kind of shed some light, but, I want to get your take on it also, the whole idea of let's get Dom a swing from, listen, I know you were teammates with McClure at St. Bonaventure. You were teammates with him in Utica. I mean, if McClure was on any other team, he'd be the team clown bar none, but he couldn't be when you have a guy like Aaron Smith saying the things that he was with let's get Dom a swing. So where do you remember that coming from? And, how funny was it just having to hear that for 2 months?
Yeah, I don't remember where that came from, but he had some good, I think he called the bus a rhino.
Yep.
Yeah, he had some good ones, and he was all summer long with stuff. I mean, he was making stuff up as he went and giving guys nicknames or whatever. Yeah, he was it was tough for McClure to step in, because he is one of those guys too, but Aaron's just such a energetic and loud guy. And so typically you have those guys who a lot of times are pitchers. That's where they usually, for me anyways, teams I played on, that's usually where they came from. So to have one that was a fielder who's always in the dugout, he's never in the bullpen, and he's always going. It was a funny summer for sure.
Yeah, vibing a cheerleader too, doing the Rockette style kicks. I won't forget that. Like, for a guy that's, he's got the beer gut a little bit, you would think he wouldn't do that, but man, just the flexibility on that guy. I mean, no wonder he played first base too. So, yeah. Obviously this is a team that, going into a game against Victor in the playoffs, it was a tough loss and a tough pill to swallow, with Mess not having his best stuff. And, Sauer didn't have a great game either. But, coming off that loss, were you thinking to yourself, or maybe it was a little later down the line, you're like, you know what, I want to run it back next summer?
Yeah, you know what? I don't even know if I had thought about it then. It was a great summer, though. I mean, we've touched on it a little bit, right? The group of guys that we had, and the staff, and you could tell, I think George was just starting to get involved a bit, right, with the team. And so you could tell you had somebody there that really wanted to win and really wanted ultimately to have a great baseball experience in Utica. So, I mean, when you get the opportunity, I think I had the year that I had, like, everything lined up perfectly. So, why would I look for another team to go to? I mean, close enough to St. Bonaventure. It's not too far from home. So I had my parents coming up a lot, watching games, and grandparents and stuff. So yeah, it just made sense. It lined up. And like I said, I mean, I had a great experience at my first year, and totally new group of guys, right, that second year. But no, I knew that if Utica was the place that I definitely wanted to be.
So, the name change for the Blue Sox, came about, like a couple months before opening night. What do you remember about hearing about that, and, the months leading up to when you eventually arrived back in Utica, and just seeing how the buzz surrounding the team just went through the roof once that happened? Yeah,
I mean, again, you look at some of the stuff, right, with George and what he's done with that team and the organization ultimately, right? I mean, it's insane. And when you go back to having the roots, right, of the Blue Sox and what they've done in the city and being there, and then you have this other summer team, this collegiate kids that are, playing it, that are the Brewers. It doesn't really hold that significance. I think it was you that maybe even texted me, because you knew that I was coming back, and you said, like, here's a sneak peek, kind of at, it might've even been a t-shirt or a jersey or something at the time. And he just said, like, yeah, we're doing the name change and whatever. And I remember hearing about it. I thought, like, it's fantastic. It's a great idea. And bringing it back to the roots there that everybody was so excited about. And I remember Olmsted and McClure and they were getting pumped up for the Blue Sox to be back. And when the city found out, I think the buzz kind of caught in. I mean, you could see it from, I mean, our first year, or my first year with the Brewers, I mean, we were having games with like 50 to 75 people in the crowd. And then you make a name change, you put a better product on the field ultimately too. And now you got 400 or 500 people showing up to every game, if not more.
So, opening night, like how much of a change was that compared to, like the regular attendance you saw as a Brewer, and then opening night? It's just like you're walking into almost like a completely different stadium and environment there. And obviously with a bigger crowd, you finally got the reception you deserved with that, that sweet sax serenading you to the plate.
Yeah. No, I wish we did that live. The live walkout that year would have been a lot nicer. We actually, the day that we did that for me, I think was after like a rain delay too. So there were even less people that were there that day. But walkie was a totally different atmosphere. And I think, you saw that too, just in the players. I mean, when you have people there, like you always talk about home field advantage, I mean, it's huge. And now you have guys going out there that want to play hard because they know that there's people there watching them. And it just was a total 360 from the first year. I mean, even competition wise, I mean, we had a lot of good guys on that second team too, in 2016, but it just seemed that we didn't have as many. So the talent was still there, but it felt like we had some less guys. And I think part of that too is, again, what you're bringing in and as a manager, as a general manager and owner, like what you're bringing in to put on the field. Because now you make this name change, right? And you have this big announcement and reveal, and you're getting people tickets and getting, butts and seats. But what are you putting on the field? Because if we start at 0-7, nobody's going to come the rest of the year. So it's one of those things too.
Yeah, I mean, and, starting the way that you did that year, and especially the stretch from, June 8th through the 22nd was just absurd, where you walked off, 4 times in the span of 2 weeks. And, the last 3 of those were in the span of just that 1 week. And, you happen to be the hero one of those times where you hit a walk-off double down the left field line against Jamestown. I don't really know if, slapping the ball the other way was really your thing. But, what do you remember just from, your own personal walk-off against Jamestown, just that ridiculous stretch that, propelled you guys into, being nationally recognized as one of the best summer college teams in the country?
Yeah. It was like I said, like a memorable summer. I mean, we had a bunch of guys that just, again, I don't think it didn't necessarily matter what school you came from and what division you were in or whatever. Everybody in the locker room, I think that year really wanted to win. And we had guys that, I would say really were like gritty, like just every morning. I mean, we were at, I think it was Max Preps, or I can't remember the name of that.
Yeah, I don't think it was Max Preps. It had to it had to be like something with like, I think it was a summer college website, I believe.
No, it wasn't the website, the facility that we would all go to, the indoor facility.
Oh, Accelerate. That's what it was.
Accelerate. And that's what it is. Yeah.
Right,
so we were there. I mean, there were guys there every morning. I mean, and we have, optional hitting, like optional BP and optional whatever. And there'd be guys that showed up early to lift weights and then do the optional hitting. And then it wasn't just like a couple guys, it was the whole team every day. And I think that it spoke a lot, one, for the coaches, two, for the guys, because a lot of us, we were all at that point, I think, actually living kind of segregated, because we got put in houses that year. So it was 5 or 6 guys in each spot, and everybody holding everyone accountable. So, making sure we got there and whatever. And I think when you translate that over to the play, I mean, it just worked on the field. And yeah, I think I was more at school, to your comment, I think more of a slap the other way guy. Just loved pounding that gap in left center there, but it worked that night. And I think part of it was, you always hear, at least for me, it was part of my game, just put the ball in play. I mean, if striking out does nothing. At least if you get the ball in play, you have to make them make a move. And I think that one went down the third base line and like hopped over third base. It's one of those weird in between plays where didn't know if he was going to get there, didn't know if it was going to hit the bag. We didn't know what was going to happen. I think we had a runner on second that needed to score. So it just worked out. And, but that's always been my approach, was just get it and play.
And also, I mean, like in an ode to Moneyball, get on base, and you did that a lot. I mean, you still have the single season and career walks record. I mean, in 2016, you walked 42 times. I don't think anyone is within like 10 of that for a single season. What led to so many walks? And it can't be as simple as just narrowing it down like, oh, this is just a 5'7" guy, it's a smaller strike zone. It's not just that.
Yeah, I think from school, a lot of it too, like with the summer, I mean, you play into this 55 game school season, and then you hit the summer. So now you're already on game 56, 57. So you're seeing the ball as well as you're going to see it all year. So there's also that plays into it. I think a lot of it was at school. I mean, there were a lot of times like when you start playing like Division I, I mean, you move from high school to Division I, and everyone in high school that's on your team now in Division I was that guy in high school. So it almost humbles you a little bit, and then you start looking at it. You have to get comfortable hitting with two strikes because the pitching's so good. So I think that was a big thing for me is the comfortability, at any point in the count. Is it 0-1? Is it 0-2? Is it 1-2? And if it's 3-0, I'm going to make you throw me a strike. If it's 3-1, I'm going to make you throw me another one, because there's no way you miss the zone 3 times in a row and you're going to come back 3 times in the middle of it. So it's one of those things. And if they do on 3-2, typically they're not painting corners. It's right down the middle, and that's what it gives you a good chance to hit. So it's always really been my approach that way. I mean, you got to get something good to hit, and you got to be in hitters counts. And like I said, very seldom would a guy start you strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, and very seldom would they start you with 3 balls and then come back with 3 more strikes. It doesn't happen. So it's playing percentages that way too. But also just, I mean, knowing the guy that's on the mound, you're seeing him pitch all game, right, to your teammates. And even if you start at the top of the order, you get a whole time through before you get up again. So watching him and making sure you can kind of pick up his pitch sequences, what he's throwing, what he likes to throw on 2-0, 1-0, 2-1, what he's comfortable throwing. And if once he gets 2 balls or he's 2-1, 2-0, something like that, and I know that, he's not coming back with an off-speed pitch because he doesn't feel comfortable throwing it, then you can see the ball really well because you're beating him at his own game that way.
Yeah. So, that team, was compared to the year before, that team was full of dogs. And, how great was it? I mean, because you were one of multiple guys who were going to be seniors the following year. I mean, you talk about, Frank Jennings, Kevin Webke, who was a late addition, was going to be a senior the following year. There was a lot of experience. It was an older team, but, that experience just, made you guys that much better and, helped you guys sustain a high level of success instead of hitting, that midseason slump and kind of, sliding from there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of maturing that happens, I think, from your freshman year to your junior year. I mean, it's just, a lot of it's just being there and seeing the action playing in games. I mean, there are some guys that don't play at all their freshman year. There's some guys that play 5 games freshman year, or they make pinch running appearances and stuff like that. So when you get some of the older guys, that there's a good chance that they've played a little bit too. So I think that played a huge factor in what we were doing. And then when you get some of the older guys on the team too, they can coach the younger guys through it, right? It's some of those nerves kind of go away. But I think as a group, I mean, we were just having fun too. Like I think we said it a few times that year, like winning's fun. Losing's not fun. So if we wanted to have a fun summer, we knew we had to win. And I think ultimately we did the best we could. I know we fell short, but it was a good summer.
Speaking of things that were said, so a couple things. Number one, I believe you were the brains behind it. God loves the Blue Sox was one of the trends from that year. And then the other was, pack the Don, because obviously the year before really wasn't packed that much, but like for each one, you obviously know more about God loves the Blue Sox than the other one, but, what do you remember just about, those two sayings coming into fruition?
I think that God loves the Blue Sox may have been me and Frank, actually. And I think I thought it originated with Jesus loves the Blue Sox. And then we just moved it to God loves the Blue Sox. And I think that came from that stretch that you talked about earlier when we were just walking off, it seemed like every night. And we were like, must be because God loves us. Cause I don't know why we're not losing these games. Cause some of those games, I mean, you don't necessarily see it at the end, but we probably should have lost those. And late in the game, we rallied back and ended up winning some. So yeah, that's where that came. The Pack the Dawn one, I don't know where that one came from, but I do remember hearing that quite a bit.
So, what was it like just being in front of a packed Donovan Stadium for that playoff run? So first and foremost, that game against Jamestown where you had a lengthy rain delay. You go down 1-0 after Webke gives up a solo shot to, I believe it was CJ Pickering from Jamestown. But, you respond with 3 in the bottom of the inning. Mason gets the 2-run knock to give you guys a lead. And it was you that came up with the run, the insurance RBI single later on in that inning, but how great was it, to come back like you always do, to get that first playoff win in franchise history in the PGCDL, and then to watch, Webke bulldog his way through 8, and then Ryan Green, new guy, even though he had been there almost the whole damn summer, dominating in the 9th.
Yeah. Yeah. We had like 4 new guys. I think he was the last new guy. So he ended up getting stuck with it for the rest of the summer. But it goes to show you too, I think, how much the city cared that year about the team. Cause we had, I remember the rain delay and coming back out and thinking, okay, well, it's the playoffs, but how many people stick around after that? And I remember that there was a decent crowd there that night still for what was there. And just that alone, I mean, helps you kind of rally as a team too. So,
that again, it was a really tough, you get over that hump and now you get Elmira, who you really, owned in the regular season. You beat him in Elmira for the opener. But what was it like in terms of, you lose Taylor Olmstead to an injury. You lose Mason Fessler to an injury. How hard was that adjustment to make? Game 2 was specifically where Sean Jelly just went out there and just absolutely shoved against you guys in Utica.
Yeah. It's, it was tough, but you think back to the first one in a 3-game series like that, and you're only playing 3, so you got to win 2 of them, and that first game's huge. You get ahead on that first one, I think you kind of start to take your hand off the panic button a little bit, calms the nerves for sure. And to go and do it at their place was even bigger because they always have a big crowd there. They always have hecklers there. They always have people like trying to get under your skin. So to go there and do it was big. After that first game or the second game that we lost, I don't remember anyone in that locker room thinking, oh, we're done. So I think we lost that game at home and thought, well, we just beat them at their place. So there's no way we don't go in there and beat them again. And sure enough, obviously it ended up happening, but yeah, they were always intimidating to play, I think, strictly just because of that crowd. But again, once you go in there that first time and you can hear that dead, deafening silence as you're shaking hands at the end of the game, it's huge for the rest of the series.
So that game 3, I want to get your take on the story of, Mike Warren. You were without him the first few games in that playoff run because he had gone home because I don't think he was aware that there was a postseason in this league. But, what was it like just seeing him just show up out of nowhere in Elmira for that decisive game 3?
Yeah, it was. He was always a clubhouse guy too, so it was nice to have him back. And I know everybody missed him, but I don't remember why he left either. But I do remember him kind of making that appearance, and it was a bit of a rally for everybody then. Yeah.
That game, by the way, also was just an up and down emotional game, and they went up, I believe, 2-1 after 6. But you tie it up in the 7th, and then you help out Ryan Green, who just came in and out of the bullpen, shoved again. But at what point did you guys think, and facing a very good closer from Elmira and Parker Karachi, did you guys think like, okay, like we've seen this guy a bunch of times, we know he's good, but we know him, we can take him, and we're just gonna obliterate this guy and give our closer this lead that he can't blow. So, were you guys really thinking to yourself, like having that exact mentality?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you get a game like that, you play 8 innings and there's 2, 3, 4 runs scored, you know that every single run is going to mean a lot. So to get some help for your pitcher, and I think honestly, like rolling into that ninth inning, I think before the inning started, most of us were like, we already got him, because it really, I mean, like I said, you have a low scoring game like that, and then tack on some, it's huge confidence. And I mean, we knew their pitching staff a little bit, but I think we had more confidence in our own than kind of the other way with them. So like I said, we got to that point, and I think most of us were like, this is it. I think we did it. So
that championship series, like I know Taylor and Frank was a little more vocal about it than Taylor, but if you guys have T.O. and Mace, does that alter the possible outcome of the series? I mean, not drastically, but just that little much, where instead of it being a 2-0 sweep where Amsterdam whoops you in both games, you probably take at least one of those games and, push it to that third and decisive game.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe it's tough to say, though. I think it would have been nice to have them for sure. I don't know. It seemed like that series, it was one of those things where like our luck almost ran out. Like everything we hit, I remember being hard hit balls, and I remember hitting one at Amsterdam into the left center gap, one of the hardest balls I had hit all year. And I don't remember who their center fielder was, but tracks it down and like made a jumping, diving catch like near the warning track in the middle of the gap. And I was like, okay, that doesn't fall. I don't know what's going to go down. And it just seemed like everybody on our team was still seeing the ball well, still doing what we do, but nothing fell for us that series.
Yeah, and they just had a bunch of guys who just raked. I mean, Joe Genord, Tristan Carranza, Chris Given, I believe, was on that team. I think he was a Xavier guy, I believe. He might have been there at the time, but yeah, no, Chris Given was another guy. But yeah, no, that Amsterdam team, obviously, we're not going to sit here and like, oh, they didn't deserve to win, because I mean, they were clearly the best team in the league, even though, we had taken 2 out of 3 from them in the regular season. But were you content with the fact that, you could end your so-called run in summer collegiate baseball, knowing that you at least had a run to the championship series?
Yeah, you know what, I think so. And I think it's, ultimately for the summer, right? I mean, the idea is to get prepped and stay loose so that you know what you're doing next year at school. And I think we went, like we said, as about as far as we could have without actually winning, and had a great summer with a bunch of great dudes. And it was tough. I know Amsterdam, I think they had some late additions, honestly, on their team, where they were picking up guys. It seemed like they had a different roster when we played them in the playoffs than they did during the year. I don't know if that's true or not, but they had a lot of different guys by then, where I think it was one of those things for us where, we pretty much stuck with the same crew the whole way through. I think we had maybe three or four new guys that we were calling them that we added. And I think 3 of them were pitchers. So it was just one of those things to get more arms. And I mean, we battled all year, and like I said, it is what it is. It sucks too bad we couldn't have won it, but yeah, I think we had a good run, and we played well all summer. And we did that Elmira series kind of took a toll on us. I mean, it was like you said, a lot of injuries, a lot of battling all summer. And I mean, like I was saying with school before, you get to that point in the summer, I mean, you're on game 110, 111. So yeah, I mean, guys are going to get hurt. Guys are worn out, and we did what we could before heading back to school. So no regrets, but it definitely sucks.
So looking back on it now, like how special do you think it is for you to know that like you were part of, the teams that really changed the culture of summer collegiate baseball in Utica? Because, I filled you in on it before, where the year before you got there, this team compiled, before that record was broken by Geneva in 2016, the worst season in PGCBL history at 9-36. So, how special was it looking back on it now that you were part of those teams that really, again, changed the trajectory of summer collegiate baseball here in the U?
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, I know we still keep in touch, and I got a bunch of the guys on the team that I met in Utica that I still keep in touch with. So it was fun just to get out there and turn it around. And I think that first year you could really tell it was you know, it was kind of a joke, I think, when we showed up, that nobody really cared about the summer team. And you know what, that first year actually we came, I think the Comets were actually in the finals there too, late in the summer.
Yeah, they were the Calder Cup final the first week or two of the season.
So people cared even less about us then. And then, like we were talking about, I mean, we played a decent summer. We turned it around. I don't think we had the best record we could have had, but again, great group of dudes. And you know, by that second year when I came back in 2016, the name change it was almost like an awakening for that team. It really did good to change that name, bring back some of the roots in baseball and say like, hey, look at the season we had last year. It wasn't that bad. We did okay. And then to come out and have the summer we had as the first season, I think really set the tone for where the organization was going to go.
So, so obviously another thing, and it can't go without being asked, you know, the fact that, you know, summer collegiate baseball, you know, you kind of think like, oh, you know, this is a good time in my life, you know, like it doesn't really, you know, like I remember it well, you know, like it was good for me and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, for the people who, you know, were able to see you play and, you know, take in the entire experience of a game, you know, there are certain parts of it, you know, like they remember something outside of the game. And you obviously with Careless Whisper gave that extra element that made games memorable. And obviously on the field, what you did, you know, over 300 career hitter in your 2 years, and still the walks leader all time in the history of the franchise, and single season for that matter. So, you know, as you look back on it now, you know, like, is that something you're like, you know, like, yeah, I'm going to tell my kids, you know, like, I'm a Hall of Famer and an icon, you know, here in the U.
Yeah. You know what? It's definitely pretty special. Because I think for me too, with Utica, I mean, like I mentioned, I came off a bit of a tough year at school. So to kind of come in and, you know, I started hitting the weight room and started playing a lot more here and did well my first year. It was almost like, you know, kind of the reimaging of me as well as a baseball player. So there's always going to be that part to me. I think the walk-up song is something that I saw the thing on Twitter. I think it was the Utica Blue Sox asked about the walk-up song. It was some sort of trivia question, and just to see even a few people respond and still remember that, you know, 5 or 6 years ago when I was playing, that they still remembered my walk-up song is pretty special. So it's something that I've definitely told all my friends here, and they still think it's hilarious, the song choice, and so do I. But that's what it was about. It was about fun. I mean, we had fun both years I was here. We did some winning, but I mean, ultimately it was an unforgettable experience for sure.
So, you know, like, again, you know, like I've been talking to you and a bunch of other guys, you know, for an alumni day. Do you think hearing Careless Whisper at the Don is going to hit a lot different, you know, being an alum and essentially, you know, being I don't want to call you washed up, but, you know, being a narc now, you know, but coming back to where you know, your old stomping grounds, and hearing that song, do you think it's going to hit different 6 years later?
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to hit the same without the hair. I think it's that if I come back and we play the song, I think I'm gonna have to grow my hair out for the summer.
Oh yeah, you know what? Like, so that's your challenge. You got 7 months to you know, to get the lettuce. I don't know if your fiance is gonna approve of it, but talk her into
I don't think there's gonna be any no's. It's just we're at like a 2-blade here, Tim. I think it's gonna be pretty hard to get it going in 7 months. It took me a while last time. I had the COVID hair going for a bit though, when everything was closed up this way, you couldn't get a haircut. But as soon as they opened up, it went right back off. I'm not hearing the song. They don't play it for me at work when I walk in the room, so I don't need the hair.
Like, you gotta tell them like, hey, like when I get here, you play George Michael, right? like you make sure that happens.
I know. I'm gonna have to get on it.
But nah, man, yo, Baldy, you know, I've been meaning to get you on. You know, we were going to do it last week, but, you know, you had a little business trip, but it was good that we rescheduled. And obviously it was a must that we had you on. You know, the fans that were here, you know, during that inaugural Blue Sox campaign, you know, you were one of those guys that made that season memorable. You know, I was glad enough, you know, being someone who was a George Michael enthusiast like yourself, and being able to convey that. And also the fact that I got someone to do it live one night. didn't time it well because it was Boilermaker Sunday also in Utica, which and then obviously it rained, so barely anyone was there, so it was a bit of a bummer. But again, like the redemption of it will be, when you get here for Alumni Day, whenever that is, you'll hear that, and it'll definitely bring back some people. They'll hear like, oh my God, he's here. Like that's what we want. So Baldy, it was really, really good to have you on. Again, it was a long time in the making, but thanks again for coming on. Keep doing what you're doing in the working world and as a NARP, if you will. And again, when the schedule comes out, hopefully sometime in July, we'll see you here back in the U. Hopefully with the borders open, you'll be able to get here and, chop it up and essentially, relive the glory days and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And like you said, long time coming, but appreciate you having me on and for us to catch up a little bit too.
Absolutely. So that wraps up the Soxcast episode 7 for Jared Baldinelli. And for Jared Baldinelli, I'm Tim Best, your PA guy. Thanks again for tuning in, and check back here next week for another episode as we got a couple of guys from last year's team, Gio Canales and Eddie Javier are going to join us. So that wraps it up for Jared. Tim Best signing off. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next week, Blue Sox Nation.